All right, so we're against prostitution, and this is our opening. Prostitution is a dark world, and women who join prostitution, it's usually for the money, but also sometimes they're forced into it, and even the women who are in it for the money don't like it, and they are forced to be there by their pimps who run them. And to remain a prostitute, and the pimps make them remain a prostitute even if they want out, but they can't leave. And the pimps rule the prostitute, and it's known that 80% of women who are involved in prostitution want out. And that was a source from the Parliament of Canada, their website. And you might say women can do what they want with their body, but most of the time, in prostitution, they have to do what the man says, and they have to do what the man is paying for. So basically, when someone says it's their body, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because the man usually makes them do what the man pays for. And prostitution can also cause a lot of problems health-wise. Although there is protected sex involved in prostitution, there's also that sex that isn't protected and can cause STDs and other health problems.
Okay. So we're for prostitution, and although you say many girls are forced into prostitution, it's partly true, but I mean the same can be said for girls who work at like a checkout counter, guys who drive taxi. Nobody wants to drive taxi for the rest of their life, but you know they got to make ends meet, and they go out and do their job, and that's how they do it, right? It's what they got to do to make ends meet. This is their life choice. While this goes for most of the majority, there have been proven cases of the forced prostitution, but with regulation, it should help aid the forced prostitution to get to be eliminated. Also, with regards to the risk of STDs, in Amsterdam, they say that it's pretty hard to find anybody, any girl who will do anything without the use of condoms. It's not a regular practice, and it's just not ethical for their business.
I would just like to add quick that you made a great point about saying that prostitution is a dark thing, and there's a lot of diseases that get transmitted and stuff. But what we are fighting for isn't prostitution right now and the legal prostitution. We're fighting for making prostitution something that's available and something that is, regulated properly. And we think that's possible and it can be done because there's a porn industry that has prostitution going on in it. But you just put a camera in front of it and they get paid, and they just expect it to be, not prostitution. So we just want to put regulations on it, and we want it to be legal so people have more jobs.
Good.
All right, I'm going to start off with the points, or our 4 points. I'm going to start off with age, in being that, according to Stats Canada, 75 to 80% of prostitutes are 14 to 18 years old, which is a fairly young age, and a lot of them don't really understand what they're doing. They're forced into it, and they don't have the choice in order to do what they want with their lives. They're just pushed into it, into street prostitution, and that's not really acceptable for anybody. As well, we're going to also talk about the domestic violence and homicide according to the Parliament of Canada of prostitution. From 1994 to 2003, at least 79 prostitutes were murdered while engaging in prostitution activities. And those are the only ones that were reported, just being that it is kind of a small number, but those are the only ones that were reported, and there could have been more throughout the past 10 years, and even the time span from 94 to 2003.
right. Got some points here. The ethics of prostitution, it's just something that isn't right, we do believe. And someone shouldn't be paying for another person to just use them. It's just not right. And that's what basically prostitution is. Another human being using another human being just for sex, just for pleasure. And it's awful and gross at the same time because it's not ethical. It's not something what we should be doing for money. And it causes harm to your body and to your own self. And also children being exposed to prostitution, like Steve said. It's known that first experience with prostitution is in the ages between 14 to 18. And that's pretty awful because that could be someone's daughter out there. And you hear about people going missing, and you hear about all the Aboriginal people that have been going missing in the past, and they don't know where they are. They could easily be brought into sex rings, and they're forced into it. And it's sick that older men want to sleep with a young minor, because that's really what's happening most of the time. And that's what prostitution is becoming.
Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and make my 2 points first.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, there are many countries around the world that have prostitution legalized. One of the most famous ones and well-known ones is Australia, and I'm pretty sure they're doing fine. I would just like to point out that you guys keep saying that there's this 14 to 18 range where girls are going into prostitution and then they're getting raped or whatever's happening. A good point to make here is that this is an underground activity right now, but why don't we put some money into it and make it legal and put some resources into it and make it, have some restrictions and have some regulations? Because like we look into porn, you have to be above 18. There's strip clubs, you have to be above 18, above 21 in USA to go in there and experience the stuff. So why don't we do that with prostitution and then let it be legal so we can form companies that protect women who want to make a living that way.
You guys touched on the rape aspect of prostitution. In the United States, they say if they were to legalize it across the country, rape would be decreased roughly around 25% to like 25,000 rapes per year, which still sounds like a lot of like people getting raped, but I mean it's better than what we're usually used to, where it's these girls, they'll go out and they'll get paid or they won't get paid for what they're doing, and it's all unregulated underground stuff, and they end up getting raped and then either killed or disposed of in a normal manner. But I mean, also you have to look at the money aspect that will come into it. Amsterdam's red light industry says that roughly 15 minutes of oral sex and intercourse costs you around €50, which is $70 here in Canada. The money that can be made off of it is astronomical, and like the taxes that'll be paid off of that can also get used towards looking for research towards how to look for safer ways to go about to cancel out diseases, just to get around that whole, put up programs around not getting people diseased within the industry.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, so 4 points each side. That was great. Now we have a 1 minute break.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
It's just like quite safe. And then let's talk about something like what if we build some sort of session tax, session with some sort of tax, and give that to the government, and they can put it back into making
stats time.
Thank you. Open debate starts now when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Steve.
I'm going to start off with, do you guys know what subject we're talking about? Because never once in our opening statement or for points did we mention we're talking about rape. We didn't mention any rape that's happening. We just mentioned that prostitutes, they are getting beaten in these situations. They're getting murdered, and that's nothing to do with rape. So I don't know where you guys have lined up that we're talking about rape. It's more of the prostitutes who are forced into this to perform sex activities that they don't necessarily want to do. It's a way for them to get money. They're getting paid for it, but it's still not a life choice that they
But in
want.
the end, if they're
forced
getting
into it.
killed after they've had the encounter with the person,
Yeah.
if they're not getting paid, that's rape in that sense, because
more
they
of
were
just a
they did not
homicide.
want, right, but it's still, they're getting raped and then murdered, and they're not getting paid, they're not gonna be alive. There's two acts there, they're getting raped and then they're getting murdered.
There's also the fact that he stated something, for example, along the lines that nobody wants to do a job, like a taxi driver doesn't want to drive taxis. Well, a prostitute doesn't necessarily want to sell her body for sex, but she has to because she has to make that money, right? And you yourself
Yeah,
said,
but they're forced into it. They're not going out, and it's not in elementary school and say, what do you want to grow up? Nobody's saying, yeah, I want to be a taxi driver. There's not a lot of people doing that.
Right, but they're forced to do that.
Taxi
Taxi drivers are.
No, they're not
they could-
forced to
they could
drive
go
a
to school.
taxi.
You know, a prostitute could go to school like we are.
Yeah,
and take a
but
course
a
in
taxi
school.
driver doesn't have to drive a taxi.
Right.
He could
And neither does a
look into many
prostitute.
other job options of saying, oh, I want to be a chef, or I could go work at McDonald's. But he doesn't. Nobody's saying you have to drive a taxi, or else I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to beat you up, or if you don't perform this sexual activity on me, I'm going to,
so you're saying that women are being forced into prostitution when they
Because
don't
they
have
don't
a choice, against their will, right? So what we're saying is, why don't we put money into it and let the government fund it and make it a safer process?
So they
Why
have
don't-
that choice to
Yeah.
get out of it when
So-
they want to get out of it.
So like we have strip clubs and stuff like that, there's regulations there, like you're not allowed to touch them and stuff like that. And there's people there to stop you from doing that. So why don't we put money into prostitution, make it legal and help prostitutes,
You want someone
have a
watching
safer
perform
environment?
sex to a prostitute?
If that's what it takes, then it has to be done.
What's
Yeah.
the point? No one will
If-
even
if
want
you-
to do
if
that.
Some
wanna-
people are into that kind of stuff too.
If you wanna pay for having sex, then there should be regulations, and if that means that someone's there watching, making sure things don't go wrong, then that has to happen.
But I bet you,
see, that's the thing. The thing is that even though the government puts out these regulations, still people are still going to say, give an FU to the government and do it behind their back and do it illegally, and there still can be pimps out there, and there still can be people out there. So you're basically saying it's okay. Well, you're saying prostitution is okay when there's still terrible things
so-
going on behind.
For example, so if you take this talk over to drugs and stuff like that, smoking, underage smoking and stuff like that, the government is saying you can't smoke unless you're under 18, but people still do it. Doesn't mean the government says it's okay for under 18 people to smoke. It happens. In every sort of thing, there's illegal stuff happens. The point is you're trying to make it better. You're trying to help make it a better environment for people who are old enough.
yeah, but even if you make it legal, then a pimp is not gonna say, yeah, let's go into this nice business that the government's giving us. Nice, that's wonderful. They're gonna take most of our money. Yeah, they're gonna not let me force this woman to be here anymore because she can go to college or something instead.
No, that's good.
and
You
I'll
get those
lose.
people off the streets. There's no need for a person that
No, I'm not saying
beats
that-
a woman who beats a woman.
No, they're
every
gonna
day
stay.
to keep
No,
her-
they're gonna stay illegal. They're not gonna go legal.
Another thing we wanted to suggest is what if, when you legalize prostitution, you add some sort of tax? Well, every session has some sort of tax that goes to the government, and government can put that money into building or putting more money into police force, so the police can actually go out and bust these
Well, in the
pimps or
first place,
whatever.
you gotta get the prostitutes into being government-owned, pretty much.
I'm not telling you to take every prostitute that's out there and turn her into a government employee. I'm telling you to give girls an option. If a girl doesn't, she wants to sell her body and she wants to get into prostitution, then she can do it in an easier way and she can get out. I'm not telling you to convert those girls into governments. I'm telling you to make a new company that can, have new prostitutes. So you can build some money, you can put it into the police force, and then they can go out. Because then that will shift the idea and those views of those girls, and that will bring them over soon. And then we'll have a bigger range of prostitutes.
So what do you think legal age limit would be for a prostitute, because according to Stats Canada, 14
Well,
to
that's
18-year-old girls. Damn, right in the middle. That's all right.
Great, open debate, you guys. A minute break before we have our closing statements.
Couldn't give me one more minute, John.
I would have replied to that.
Man, you guys could have kept on going for half an hour.
Yeah. We can both get home because it's 2 minutes.
Right, okay. Okay, I'm gonna close it with this.
One minute break over.
Okay, thank you. Closing statements, go ahead when you're ready.
All right. Well, we can't live in a world where people, mainly men, are beating women who they are paying for sex. They feel that they have an entitlement, and it can lead to many problems. Mainly, it leads to a world where domestic violence is becoming more current and more severe, and that's another issue on top of the prostitution that we have to deal with, and that's never good. We can't live in a world where people feel that they're not good enough and they're letting people say, I'm going to perform this sexual activity on you, and that's the way it's going to go. You have to do what I say. Prostitution, it's not a career or a profession where you can say, I'm done being a prostitute, I want to go into being a doctor. Where a doctor, you could say at the end of the day, I'm done being a doctor, I'm going to change over into a police officer. Those are just examples of what these people can do that prostitutes don't really have, while they're doing street prostitution or whatever. So at the end of the day, we really have to ask, do you want that to be your daughter? Do you?
Is he saying something?
That's it.
That's
Go
it?
ahead.
Okay. Prostitution really shouldn't be a crime. Prostitutes are not committing an inherently act. While the spread of disease and other detriments are possible in the practice of this, criminalization is just basically, turning a blind eye to it, not addressing these problems. It was quite clear it happened with alcohol, or with the prohibition of alcohol. It was just, they turned a blind eye and it still happened.
I agree with you, Steve. We can't live in a world where women are getting beaten while they're trying to make a living or money, and that is why we think prostitution needs to be made legal so that the government can help make prostitution safer.
You didn't answer my question.